But one of the most beautiful shots that I love about the film, and the saddest thing was his death. When he's at the just hanging on at the top up there, and you can look into his eyes.
And after Lord of the Rings, maybe you get another call, and it's Peter again, and he says, "I'd like you to work on my next movie." And you're probably thinking, okay, it's probably going to be a small little independent movie, but no, Peter Jackson goes off and he goes nuclear and does King Kong, which now it sounds like King Kong was kind of in the works, as an idea, maybe conceptually, even before Lord of the Rings.
It was, yeah, it was something that Peter had wanted to do for a long time because it's one of Peter's, most all-time favorite films.
Right.
And the original came out of 1931, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah.
But anyways, and so he'd always wanted to make it. And as I mentioned before, it was going to happen, but then because we were doing Godzilla and Rick was doing Mighty Joe Young, they pulled the plug on it. So I think Peter always knew in the back of his mind that he's going to make this film. He's going to make his own, King Kong,
Right.
which he did. And so, I mean, definitely, it's like it was probably during Return of the King that murmurings were happening where it's like well, Pete's next thing is going to be King Kong. So it's like, yeah, let's do it. And it was just and for me as a kid, growing up with King Kong and loving it so much, and to be part of it is just like, wow, it's just really incredible. And in this case, it was being involved with on the makeup side of things, of coming up with the makeup designs for the natives. Now I had my great friend Dominique Till, who's a brilliant makeup artist. She was a Kiwi, but now lives in LA and married a great friend of mine, Randy Cook. And but Dominique and I had an amazing time of just trying to come up with all these different kind of looks and stuff for the natives. And what was interesting is that Peter had found this photograph, I think in like a National Geographic or something, but there was some tribe of natives out there, but their skin was so black. It was beautiful black. It was almost blue. And, the way that they would turn in the light, it was just gorgeous stuff. And as a tradition, what they would do for the ceremonies, they would get these kind of berries. I don't know what kind of berries they were, but they would squirt these berries into their eyes, which would turn the sclera, the white part of the eye, totally red.
Wow.
So it's almost like
Jeez.
the 30 Days of Night
Yeah.
kind of led stuff. And so what was beautiful about it is that you had this gorgeous black skin, but the contrast between their skin and these red eyes was just gorgeous. And Peter had this picture in his mind, and he said, this is what I want for the natives. And so Dominique had come up with this great mixture of this kind of black kind of color that we could airbrush on top of their skin. And actually it had like a pearlescent powder in it, and so we could almost like buff the skin, which would make it quite shiny,
Mm.
which would look quite beautiful. And so we did tons of tests and piercings, tons of all these different piercings and things. And Gareth McGee, who was the workshop supervisor at the time at What a Workshop, came up with a lot of the designs and stuff for their wardrobe, which in this case, wasn't much wardrobe. They were kind of scantily clothed.
Mm.
But he had for the guys, they had these cod pieces that they would wear, and basically that was about it. And same as the women, they had these things that we call them the hairy bikinis, and basically it was a top piece and of course a bottom piece, but just not much covering. And where we shot at was just not far from here, but we shot at nighttime, and I think it might have even been the wintertime, but it was damn cold out there, but it had to be raining.
Mm.
And so, and these poor guys are just freezing their butts off because first of all, we had to spray paint their whole bodies with this beautiful black color. And then they had to get the costumes on and get their makeup and stuff on, and then go stand out there. And they'd all be having these like covers on and blankets and stuff to keep warm, and they're
Mm.
shivering. It's like, all right, we're getting ready to shoot. And so they would go off, and the runners would go out there and take off all the jackets and all that stuff, and they'd be standing there and said, okay, let's get the rain going. So the rain would be coming down, on top of them. They'd be freezing as it was, and they would get all these really cool shots. But
Yeah.
yeah, great
It,
times.
it was such a beautiful movie. And I found like the new King Kong movies and King Kong and Godzilla, I actually enjoyed them. I thought that they were a lot of fun. But what I really loved about Peter Jackson's one is that it kept the humanity of the original one. There's this real human story at its core, and this, as big as it is, there's something small and intimate about that movie. And I don't know if it was because it just, it came in the wake of the Lord of the Rings, that maybe there was a massive expectation for it, but I also feel like it's one of those underappreciated movies. Is that something that did you feel that too? And if so, why do you think that was?
Yeah, again, it was some very clever writing, and
Mm.
with the casting was great and very interesting. But of course, my favorite character, of course, was Kong, and it was
Yeah.
interesting. But going back to the design of Kong, um, Peter had always loved this gorilla. I think it was like the only albino gorilla in the world. His name was Snowflake, and he
Mm.
was in a zoo in Spain, I believe. And the thing about Snowflake, if you ever look up Snowflake on the net, but he's got a very interesting face. It's very I'm going to say pillowy, with a lot of kind of wrinkles, but they're very soft, and it feels like little tiny pillows and everything like that, which made him look quite unique and very different from just a standard gorilla. And so Peter loved that, and but also he has at the time he had a couple of pug dogs, and one of his dogs, his name was Monster, and Monster had a tooth that would like a snaggle tooth like this, and so that's why Kong has that kind of snaggle tooth, and it's based off of one of his dogs. Um, but that and just the whole design and just the whole animation again, Andy Serkis again, doing some really cool performances and stuff. And you're right in that you really feel for Kong.
Mm.
He was fine. He was minding his own business, living on his island and everything, and then it gets taken away to New York and stuff. But one of the most beautiful shots that I love about the film, and the saddest thing was his death. When he's just hanging on at the top up there, and you can look into his eyes. And there's next time you watch it, maybe you've noticed this, but if you watch it, you'll see the glint of his eyes just kind of fade away, just as the moment that he's passed, and so he no longer has that sharp highlight in his eyes. It just fades away, and then that's when he lets go and falls. But there's some really beautiful moments that
Yeah,
are in the
yeah.
film.